Tato jayam udirayat nastapareshu badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate mashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Remembrance of Lord Krishna. Text 29. Sa eva Godanam Lakshmya Niketam Sita Go Visham Charayan Anugan Gopan Ranad Venur Ariramat Sa eva Godanam Lakshmya Niketam Sita Go Visham Charayan Anugan Gopan Ranad Venur Arir Ramat Sa eva Godanam Lakshmya Niketam Sita Go Visham Charayan Anugan Gopan Ranad Venur Arir Ramat Sveva Godanam Lakshmya Niketam Sita Go Visham Charayan Anugan Gopan Ranad Venur Arir Ramat Sa He Lord Krishna Eva certainly Godanam the treasure of cows Lakshmya by opulence Niketam reservoir Sita Govrisham beautiful cows and bulls Charayan herding Anugan the followers Gopan cowherd boys Ranat blowing. Venu, flute. Ariramat, enlivened. While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who was the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Please repeat. While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who was the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. As he grew to 6 and 7 years old, the Lord was given charge of looking after the cows and bulls in the grazing grounds. He was the son of a well-to-do landholder who owned hundreds and thousands of cows, and according to Vedic economics, one is considered to be a rich man by the strength of his store of grains and cows. With only these two things, cows and grains, humanity can solve its eating problem. Human society needs only sufficient grain and sufficient cows to solve its economic problems. All other things but these two are artificial necessities created by man to kill his valuable life at the human level and waste his time in things which are not needed. Lord Krishna, as the teacher of human society, personally showed by his acts that the mercantile community, or the Vaishyas, should herd cows and bulls and thus give protection to the valuable animals. According to Smriti regulation, the cow is the mother and the bull the father of the human being. The cow is the mother because just as one sucks the breast of one's mother, human society takes cow's milk. Similarly, the bull is the father of human society because the father earns for the children just as the bull tills the ground to produce food grains. Human society will kill its spirit of life by killing the father and the mother. It is mentioned herein that the beautiful cows and bulls were of various checkered colors: red, black, green, yellow, ash, etc. And because of their colors and healthy, smiling features, the atmosphere was enlivening. Over and above all, the Lord used to play his celebrated flute. The sound vibrated by his flute would give his friends such transcendental pleasure that they would forget all the talks of the Brahmananda, which is so praised by the impersonalists. These cowherd boys, as will be explained by Shukadeva Goswami, were living entities who had accumulated heaps of pious acts and thus were enjoying with the Lord in person and were hearing his transcendental flute. The Brahma Samhita 5:30 confirms the Lord's blowing his transcendental flute. Vedam Kvanantam Aravinda Dalaya Taksham Bhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govindam Adipursham Tamaham Bhajami. Brahmaji said, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who plays on his transcendental flute. His eyes are like lotus flowers. He is decorated with peacock plumes, and his bodily color resembles a fresh black cloud, although his bodily features are more beautiful than millions of cupids. These are the special features of the Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagvajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Dham Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Barijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Cha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Sarito Bangor Mama Manda Matergati Matsarvasva Padambo Jo Radha Madana Mohano Dibyad Bindaranya Kalpajumada Shrimad Ratnagara Shingasanasto Shrimad Radha Shilagovinda Devo Prestalabi Savyamano Smarami Shriman Rasa Rasarambi Mamsi Bhatta Tatasti Taha Karshan Venu Svanar Gopir Gopi Natha Shriye Stuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripasindubhya eva cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Kaler Dosa Nadera Jan Hasti Eka Mahagunad Kirtanadeva Krishnasya Mukta Sangha Param Bhajet Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Nam, Hare Nam Eva Kevalam, Kalona Steva, Gatir Anyata, Sa Eva Godanam Lakshmya, Diketam Sita Govisham, Charayan Nanugan Gopan Ranad Venur Arir Ramat. While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who is the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. So, from the mouth of Uddhava, most dear and confidential devotee of the Lord, so much so, chosen by Lord Krishna to deliver his message, Lord Krishna's message, revealing his deep, actually anguishing feelings in separation from the residents of Vrindavan. This is something which is confidential for many reasons. One instructive reason or practical reason is because persons who have not, what to speak of, understood, but have accelerated and deeply matured, as Prabhupada describes Shukadeva Goswami, will be explained. This is the 3rd canto, chapter 2, not until the 12th chapter, Deliverance of Aghasura, of the 10th canto, which we will look at in due course of time. Krita Punya Punja, heaps and heaps of transcendental pious activities have accumulated. As we're hearing that understanding Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so much imperceptibly interwoven into the texture of their relationship, which is simultaneously the highest form of worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhishma Dev, chapter 9. The Lord relishes the reproaches of his fiancées more than the reverent hymns of the Vedas. So Uddhava is speaking, and the last few verses he's describing the transcendental situation of the Lord in his childhood, as we were hearing, as he grew to 6 or 7 years. This is a reference to what is a whole day given for Utsav and celebration, Gopastami, the 8th day of the waxing moon of the month of Kartik, when the Lord actually became a cowherd boy, given charge of the cows and bulls, graduating up from being small and just taking care of the small calves. In childhood, the Almighty Lord was surrounded by cowherd boys and calves, and thus he traveled on the shore of the Yamuna River through gardens densely covered with trees and filled with vibrations of chirping birds. These cowherd boys were great rishis and yogis in their previous births, and after many such pious births, they gained the association of the Lord and can play with him on equal terms. And what is the greatest, most powerful and complete sneha, samya? What is the greatest and most complete act of actual piety? Anarthas arising from sinful activities that impede our devotional service, our ability to stay steady, kirtaniya sadhari, the ability to chant the holy name in ecstatic rapture 24 hours a day. Yes, we can understand sinful activities impede those things, but the acharyas describe that even pious activities, or we perform so-calledly religious or spiritual activities, but with a view that by doing so I will be rewarded with a higher standard of material life, whether in this world or, Veda Vadarata. They say that there is nothing more than this, going to heaven and enjoy, and we will not describe the situation of enjoyment in the heavenly planets. There's one particular religious system on the planet today that its fanatical followers say that by dying as a suicide bomber that you will get to enjoy with fill in the blanks. Crazy. So the ultimate pious activity is performing pure devotional service, which is enshrined, encapsulated, and made complete by propagating the Yuga Dharma of the chanting of the Lord's holy names. And its natural extension, the transcendental Shastras distributed in the form of Srila Prabhupada's books, which are ultimately meant to convince, and not only to convince, but keep you convinced that taking part in Lord Chaitanya's Yuga Dharma Sankirtan movement, which is the complete inclusion of all all Krishna consciousness, is the highest activity. So by accumulating more and more volume, Sankhya Purvaka Nama Gana Nati B, by numerical strength, that is why our human form of life is so important. Every minute, every hour, every day, week, month, year, decade of our life. Keep your health very nice. Live as many years as possible. Our only ambition is to serve the Lord without material motivation, Prabhupada said. Such cowherd boys never cared to know who Krishna was, but they played with him as the most intimate and lovable friend. They were so fond of the Lord that at night they would only think of the next morning when they would be able to meet the Lord and go together to the forests for cow herding. The land of Vrindavan, the Lord's childhood playground, still remains today. And anyone who visits the places enjoys the same transcendental bliss, although the Lord is not physically visible. Lord Chaitanya recommended this land of the Lord as identical with the Lord and therefore worshipable by the devotees. This instruction is taken up especially by the followers of Lord Chaitanya, known as the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And because the land is identical with the Lord, devotees like Uddhava and Vidura visited those places 5,000 years ago in order to have direct contact with the Lord, visible or not visible. And just described earlier, Vidura, in order to gain a higher status of pious life, giving up the politics and diplomacy of the association of Duryodhana and company, by which he admitted he himself became tainted by that association. He performed the Pilgrim's Progress. Thousands of devotees of the Lord are still wandering in these sacred places of Vrindavan, and all of them are preparing themselves to go back home, back to Godhead. Not wandering like aimless vagabonds, but they are Rasika. They're expert at tasting transcendental mellows. There was devotees who were sent to excavate the lost places of pilgrimage. It was one of the tasks of the six Goswamis, and subsequent followers like Nayan Bhatta Goswami. His samadhi is at Uchagang, the place of Lalita Devi. Simply by their ecstatic pure devotion and meditation, the holy places revealed themselves in all intricate detail to these devotees. And what we have now in much informed delineation throughout the entire Prikram of Braj Mandal, all the different places, it is due to the most super excellent and super mundane devotional service of these Mahabhagavats on behalf of the Lord. So, most important here, especially in the first paragraph of today's purport, although Krishna was the son of Nanda Maharaj, a well-to-do landowner, who owned hundreds and thousands of cows, according to Vedic economics, not the system we have now where just a few elite just print paper money as they see fit and enslave everybody else in trying to attain these pieces of paper, which they can inflate or deflate according to their will. Real wealth is actually that which can ensure you complete safety and soundness in this world. Grains and cows. Grains also includes fruits and vegetables. Food, edible food. And what to speak of complete, all the herbs that are given, medicinal herbs that are there all over the world. It's even described that if you eat what is locally prepared, where you're from by birth, then you will stay very, very healthy. With only these two things, or these things, cows and grain, humanity can solve its eating problem. The Prabhupada says anything beyond this, artificial. And not only artificial, but it is meant to kill the valuable life of the human level. That this human form of life, Manusha Janmapaya Radha Krishna Nabhajiya, that this human form of life is meant for worship of the divine couple, Shishi Radha and Krishna. And anything else is simply a distraction. My dear king, those devoid of Atma Tattva, they have many, many subject matters for hearing in human society. And going along with artificial requirements, the artificial way of living, which by the manipulation of the atheists and the demons can always put one in a very precarious position. But if one has land, cows, bulls, grains, seeds, there are no problems. Simple living, very, very high thinking, ultimately to the highest level of thinking, just as the Transcendental Cowherd Boys and these great personalities, yogis, rishis, demigods who have accumulated heaps and heaps of transcendental pious activities over so many lifetimes can now experience the Paramananda of directly associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His pleasure pastimes. On the highest perfectional level of living. Lord Krishna, as the teacher of human society, personally showed by his acts that the mercantile community or the Vaishyas should herd cows and bulls and thus give protection to the valuable animals. Human society will kill its spirit of life by killing the father and mother. So, in the most beautiful chapter, it's titled Atrocities of King Kamsa. But at the beginning of this chapter is the description of Nandotsav, the day after the Lord was born. Oh, no. This is chapter 5. Chapter 5, that's where it is. Yes, beautiful chapter, the meeting of Nanda Maharaj and Vasudeva. Nanda Maharaj was naturally very magnanimous, and when Lord Sri Krishna appeared as his son, he was overwhelmed by jubilation. Therefore, after bathing and purifying himself and dressing himself properly, he invited Brahmins who knew how to recite Vedic mantras. He performed the birth ceremony according to the rules and regulations. He gave 2 million cows in charity to the Brahmins, completely decorated with cloth and jewels. He also gave them 7 hills of grain covered with jewels and with cloth decorated with golden embroidery. This is a nice description of how to purify things. O king, by the passing of time, land and other material possessions are purified. By bathing, the body is purified. And by being cleansed, unclean things are purified. By purificatory ceremonies, birth is purified. By austerity, the senses are purified. And by worship and charity offered to the Brahmanas, material possessions are purified. By satisfaction, the mind is purified. And by self-realization or Krishna consciousness, the soul is purified. The cows, the bulls, and the calves were thoroughly smeared with a mixture of turmeric and oil mixed with varieties of minerals. Their heads were bedecked with peacock feathers, and they were garlanded and covered with cloth and golden ornaments. Krishna is instructed, 1844 Gita, Shiri Go Raksham Vanigyam Vaishyakarma Svabhavajam. Farming, cow protection, and trade are the qualities of work for the Vaishyas. Nanda belonged to that community. How to protect the cows and how rich this community was are explained in these verses. We can hardly imagine the cows and bulls and calves could be cared for so nicely and decorated so well with cloths and valuable golden ornaments. How happy they were. During Maharaj Yudhishthir's times, the cows were so happy that they used to muddy the pasturing ground with milk. This is Indian civilization. Prabhupada, upon his return to India in 1970, he manifested what he attributed as his personal desire to reignite the fire of Krishna consciousness in the Indian subcontinent. You hear the memory of Yamuna Devi. He said Prabhupada was destined to do that. My spiritual master ordered me to preach in the West, and I have done that. My personal desire is to reignite the Krishna consciousness of India. There was some seemingly unpleasant circumstances that led Srila Prabhupada to leave America, Los Angeles, in 1970. And Prabhupada revealed he had a argument with Krishna, who was ordering him to go back to India. And Prabhupada, why should I go? My spiritual master gave India to my godbrothers, but I've been destined to preach in the West. I have this wonderful temple, just moved in, Watsika Boulevard, and I want to develop it. I said, yes, all right, but if you go back to India, I will give you a temple hundreds of times better than this Los Angeles temple. What is that temple? The Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan. Yet, in the same place, India, Bharatvarsha, how much people are suffering by giving up the Vedic way of life and not understanding the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. The cowherd men were dressed very opulently with valuable ornaments and garments such as coats and turbans. Decorated in this way and carrying various presentations in their hands, they approached the house of Nanda Maharaj. When we consider the past condition of the agriculturalist in the village, we can see how opulent he was simply because of agricultural produce and protection of cows. Here's a New Vrindavan story. Prabhupada was there in 1974. The place where he was preaching is commemorated just a little south of the, or down the hill from the Palace of Gold parking lot. So anyway, so there was a judge, but he also was like a farmer, and he came to see Srila Prabhupada during the darshan. He was wearing old dungaree overalls, and he had like a brown grocery bag. Hey, Swami, this is for you. And Prabhupada looked, and it was all like squash, zucchinis, and tomatoes, and And Prabhupada said, this is love. When you give vegetables that you grew with your own hands from your own garden to somebody else. And the judge was like, oh, shucks, you know. How opulent he was, simply because of agricultural produce and protection of cows. At the present, however, agriculture having been neglected and cow protection given up, the agriculturist is suffering pitiably and is dressed in a niggardly torn cloth. This is the distinction between the India of history and the India of the present day. By the atrocious activities of Ugra Karma, how we are killing the opportunity of human civilization. It is mentioned herein that the beautiful cows and bulls were of various checkered colors, red, black, green, yellow, ash, etc. And because of their colors and healthy smiling features, the atmosphere was enlivening. There's beautiful descriptions in Astakalya Leela grunts or books such as Govinda Leela Amrita, Krishna Bhavanamrita, especially in the sections that describe the pastimes Krishna leaves with Balaram and the cowherd boys after breakfast to the pasturing grounds, and calling all the different cows, and Krishna has a cow mala that he has like jewels on, and calls them by different names and categories. Here's some mention, different colors. And just to show you how much Krishna puts the comfort and satisfaction of the cows first, or equal to his own comfort, that Mother Yashoda, we hear how Mother Yashoda, the gopis, they're very concerned that Krishna is walking barefoot in the pasturing grounds and might hurt his very soft lotus feet on little thorns and brambles. Those of you who've done Govardhan Prikram, there's one section where there's these tiny little barnacle things with stickies in it, you know, and it's like, ouch, 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 ouch. So Mother Yashoda wants Krishna to wear shoes, or some type of sandals or something, foot covering, and Krishna says, well, if you do, if I'm going to wear shoes, then all of the cows all have to wear shoes, and each has to have 2 pairs of shoes because they have four feet. Lalu and Kalu, could you say how many legs this cow has? 1, 2. Stop, he's going to teach you how to count. That's a side story. For those of you who know will get the purport. We won't take time to explain it. For those of you who don't know, it'll be a mystery until it'll be revealed. So if the cows aren't wearing shoes, then I'm not going to wear shoes. So there's a beauty, as we were mentioning earlier, the 12th chapter, the deliverance of Aghasura. Krishna decided to take his breakfast as a picnic in the forest. Having risen early in the morning, he blew his bugle made of horn and woke all the cowherd boys and calves with his beautiful sound. Then Krishna and the boys, keeping their respective groups of calves before them, proceeded from Brajabhumi to the forest. Hundreds and thousands of cowherd boys came out of their respective homes in Brajabhumi and joined Krishna, keeping before them their hundreds and thousands of groups of calves. So this is before Krishna became cowherd boy. The boys were very beautiful, and they were equipped with lunch bags, bugles, flutes, and sticks for controlling the calves. Along with the cowherd boys and their own groups of calves, Krishna came out with an unlimited number of calves assembled. Then all the boys began to sport in the forest in a greatly playful spirit. How they were decorated so beautifully. All the boys would be differently engaged. It's a lengthy description of things that they would do, different games and tricks they would play. In this way, all the cowherd boys used to play with Krishna, who was the source of the Brahman effulgence for jnanis desiring to merge into that effulgence, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead for devotees who have accepted eternal servitorship, and who for ordinary persons is but another ordinary child. Who is this talkative child, Krishna? He has talked his foolish elders out of performing the puja to me, Indra. I will now show them my power, ordering the Sambhavartika clouds, which are called for at the time of dissolution of the universe, and pour down heavy rain. O Lord Brahma, who is this little boy with all this calves? Let me steal them for a minute and see. And Krishna manifested unlimited Vishnu forms from all the cowherd boys and all the calves. He had himself assumed their identities. In colloquial terms, it blew Lord Brahma's mind. The cowherd boys, having accumulated the results of pious activities for many lives, were able to associate in this way with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How can one explain their great good fortune? Diverting even a little of one's attention towards Krishna and activities in Krishna consciousness immediately enables one to achieve the highest perfection of life. This is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. Lokasya janato vidvams chakri sattvata samhitam, Bhagavatam 1:7-6. The secret of success is unknown to people in general, and therefore Srila Vyasadeva, being compassionate toward the poor souls in this material world, especially in this age of Kali, has given us the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vaishnavanam Priyam. For Vaishnavas who are somewhat advanced, who are fully aware of the glories and potencies of the Lord, Srimad Bhagavatam is a beloved Vedic literature. After all, we have to change the body, deha dehantara prapti. If we do not care about Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, we do not know what our next body will be. But if one adheres to these two books, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, one is sure to obtain the association of Krishna in the next life. Tyakvateham punarjanma naitimam iti sarjuna. Therefore, distribution of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world is a great welfare activities for theologians, philosophers, transcendentalists, and yogis, yoginam api sarvesham, as well as for the people in general. If one can somehow or other remember Krishna, Narayan, at the end of his life, our life will be successful. Yogis may undergo severe austerities and penances for many births by practicing yama, niyama, asana, and pranayama, none of which are easily performed. Yet in due course of time, when these yogis attain the perfection of controlling the mind, they will still be unable to taste even a particle of dust from the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What then can we describe about the great fortune of the inhabitants of Brajabhumi, Vrindavan, with whom the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally lived and who saw the Lord face to face? It is impossible to describe how after many, many births of pious activities, they have become so fortunate. So we're very much blessed, inestimably blessed by Srila Prabhupada to have been given the opportunity to take part in Lord Krishna, Lord Chaitanya's movement, the Sankirtan movement, the Hare Krishna movement. Here we are sheltered at the lotus feet of Shri Shri Radha Govinda in a temple of jewels underneath the desire trees in Vrindavan, seated upon an effulgent throne, are the divine couple, Shri Shri Radha Govinda, served by their most confidential associates. We beg to offer our respectful obeisances unto them. So by hearing, chanting, remembering, and serving, we can become more and more aware of this great good fortune and be successfully or sufficiently advanced in sharp, discerning intelligence and powers of ascertainment to always be strong and alert, not to be captured by Maya, what to speak of ourselves, but to be able to become fit leaders and guardians for people in general and for those wishing to actually honestly traverse this path to go back home, back to Godhead in one lifetime, which is the result of sincerely following and becoming a member of Srila Prabhupada's Hare Krishna movement. There's no other goal and there's no other purpose. Sa eva go dinam lakshmya niketam sita go visham charayan anugan gopan ranad venur arir ramad. While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who was the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
So it says Krita Punya Punja, many like pious activities accumulated over many lifetimes, but then sometimes we hear that, you don't attain, like devotional service is difficult in mundane karma.
What?
Like you can't attain the Lord by mundane pious activities.
Right. So
it's saying pious activities.
We explained that in the class. The real definition of pious activities is performing devotional service. That's the ultimate pious activity. And we described how pious activities are materialistic if they're done with a view to achieve a higher position or to maintain one's position in this material existence. That's clear. Devotional service, bhakti, is only for the pleasure of Krishna. That's why we understand that those who yatomat tatapat, you can worship any demigod or whatever, whoever. Achieving pious activities is like earning money and saving it and then spending it. What is it? Austerity in the mode of passion, one can become, like a leader. There's a picture in the old Bhagavad Gita, sitting on a throne and got his sycophantic ministers, and then there's somebody bowing down to him, Said, one can, the results of this are temporary and can't be maintained forever, for very long, like Hitler and Napoleon, Alexander the Great. They could just make a whole list, Prabhupada with Mahatma Gandhi gave his whole life to serve his country, and in the end, his countrymen killed him. Anything else?
So then I guess a follow-up on that would be, so if we're doing devotional service, then it's kind of like the more we do it, it just builds up, and
that's right.
That'll automatically uplift us over time.
Well, it's Krishna and spiritual masters, Guru Prabhupada's program to, for an actual devotee, there's nothing else to do but remain in the family environment of steadfast devotees, because that's his life and heart and soul. But at this, when Prabhupada said, don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays. It's very easy, but because, we're motivated for sense gratification, we've yet to even realize how deeply ingrained are these desires that our tests are yet to come. So therefore, someone who has remained throughout their entire life or many, many decades, coming to so-called old age where opportunities for sense gratification. You see how young people, oh, this person's handsome, beautiful boy or girl, but old people, they're very completely identifying with themselves on the bodily conception of life. So one who has broken through that and smashed that false and actually demoniac conception is a greatly praiseworthy personality. So we have to achieve devotional service and we have to maintain it. That's our test. And also at the same time, one can achieve devotional. The devotee in Australia in 1975 said that, we've been performing sinful activities for so many lifetimes, and, so now we have to balance it out with pious activities. How long do we have to, how long does it take? And Prabhupada kind of chastised and said, you've not reading Bhagavad Gita? In 1 minute, as soon as you surrender, Krishna immediately, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam, I will relieve you from all the reactions of your sinful activities, and included in that is all the reactions of your pious activities. Right? You be a little introspective. I did devotional service, surrendered, I work hard. Now where's my fame and recognition? Where's my enjoyment? Now I want to go here and there. I deserve to do this and that. Recognize me. Huh? How much? How often? That's the broken record of the conditioned mind. So therefore, one who is equal in happiness, distress, fame and infamy, praise and blame, a devotee who is not dependent upon the ordinary course of events. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Vaishnava actually sees a disadvantage as an advantage. He knows how to turn an advantage into a disadvantage because everything is the will of Krishna. He has complete faith in Krishna's protection in all circumstances. And he doesn't care where and what he has to do. Wherever Krishna's placed him, what Krishna wants him to do, that's what he wants to do, and that's where he wants to be. That's it. No more thinking. Anything more? Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Radha Govinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol.